There we have it, guys. The best weekend on the calendar is done and gone, and what a weekend it was for a handful of drivers. Unfortunately, there always come some losers with some winners. Today we're going to be talking about everything that we saw over the course of the weekend in Brazil for the 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix. Let's go ahead and get this bad boy underway. All right off the bat, I have to give a disclaimer. I was one of the people who was affected by the YouTube TV Disney drama that came up over the last week and a half or whenever that was. And so unfortunately, I did not take action to try and find a, let's go with other version of a paid streaming site to watch the race because YouTube TV lost access to ESPN, which, as you would know, here in the United States is the broadcasting partner for F1 in the US. And so this was a weekend where I was trying to follow the weekend in any way I could, but to try and see every session as much as I could, whether it was watching highlights or some other means. And so I promise I'm going to do my best to talk about things that happened over the weekend, but at the same time, I can't promise I'm going to hit everything. But with that disclaimer out of the way, let's go ahead and jump on into this thing. We're going to be going over our weekend quick hits. We're going to be talking about our weekend winners and losers, as well as rounding this thing out with our community predictions championship. See how we did with our predictions we made before the weekend began. Let's go ahead, let's jump on into this thing, get this video started right with our weekend quick hits. All right, where else can you start in your quick hits than the fact that Brazil always delivers? I know we say that Brazil always delivers, but Brazil always delivers. This was another weekend in a long string of weekends down around Interlagos, where for whatever it may be, whether it be weather, championship implications, just absolute unexpected winners, or just bangers from start to finish, Brazil always delivers nonstop action, and it deserves the shout out every single time because it is true, and this year was absolutely no exception. You had wild moments in almost every session, wild results in almost every session, and you always leave going, wow, could we just do that again? So as always, you gotta give props to Brazil right off the top. That's the only place we could ever start. All right, let's go ahead and move on to some actual on-track action. And you have to begin at the front, as we always do. Lando Norris coming in a dominant fashion this weekend, winning both the sprint race and the Grand Prix, taking pole position in both the sprint and the Grand Prix qualifying. It was about as dominant of a weekend as you could possibly get from a driver in a car, and Lando absolutely did exactly what he needed to do this weekend to continue to build on his championship lead, with Oscar Piastri struggling mightily right now and Max Verstappen trying to come back from the impossible. And so Lando absolutely dominated this weekend to the tune of, it wasn't as dominant as Mexico was, but at the same time, I don't know how much more dominant you can get winning the Grand Prix by, what was it, like 10 seconds, around a minute 9 second lap, I think is pretty solid. So have to start there. Let's go ahead and we'll move on to Oscar Piastri, who had his moments this weekend, definitely looked a little better this weekend in terms of race pace and raw pace, but at the same time just got too tangled up in the action around him, ultimately ending up with himself getting a penalty in the Grand Prix and actually crashing out of the sprint race thanks to a puddle on the inside of, what was it, I believe it was turn 3, was that one, or wherever it was. It was a weekend of ups and downs for Oscar, crashing out of the sprint. Ultimately might not have been the worst thing in the world, considering it's only a maximum of 8 points. Obviously, if you're him, you want to take as many points as you can as you continue to fight for a championship, but at the same time, weird conditions, a weird moment. We actually saw 3 drivers crash out of that corner effectively all at the same time, so it was a bit of an odd moment for sure, but at the same time, it's gotta just feel the worst if you're him. And then you go to the Grand Prix, you qualify okay, not the best, not the worst, and ultimately you end up on a safety car restart after Gabriel Bortoletto's crash. At the opening of the race, on the restart, you're trying to be a little bit of aggressive, trying to go down the inside of Kimi Antonelli. Kimi sort of turns into Oscar. Oscar locks up, knocks into Kimi, who ultimately ends up taking out Charles Leclerc. And Oscar earns himself a 10-second penalty, effectively ending his charge right then and there. He still finished in a decent position, but at the end of the day, these are not the positions that are going to make him world champion. And it's got to be frustrating, especially for him, to just feel the championship slipping away out of his fingers. But we'll see as we head now to Vegas. But at the same time, he's going to need some magic. And I don't know if Vegas is going to be the start of that magic. Let's not go any further than Kimi Antonelli's amazing experience this weekend. The rookie heads to Brazil, which apparently just decides to want to cooperate with Mercedes as much as possible, comes in and puts in probably his best performance on the season to date, ending up on, qualifying on the front row in both races? Was it? That's right. That sounds right. It was a great weekend from Kimi. Obviously we made a lot of predictions, not to get too spoilery about George, and just feeling like Mercedes is going to be very good. But at the end of the day, Kimi Antonelli showed up and absolutely killed it this weekend, finishing on the podium in both sessions, ultimately getting his best finish in a Grand Prix ever. I mean, I say ever, it's been this season. But he was quick, he had the pace, he was able to deal with the challenges of conditions and this, that, and the other thing, and you could just go down the list. But I just wanted to highlight it here. Congratulations, Kimi. Yeah, it was an absolutely fantastic weekend from you, and I don't think you could have asked for much more than that. All right, it's already once again been too long since we mentioned it. Max Verstappen, after a shocking Q1 exit around Brazil, opts to start from the pit lane to try and make something happen on race day. We've seen him come from the back before here in Brazil, and after a very disappointing qualifying, I think all of us were expecting to see something very similar, and he did not disappoint, where he ultimately at one point led this race and ultimately was almost challenging for P2, with Kimi Antonelli eventually holding him off to take second place. But a pit lane to P3, a pit lane to podium, whatever you want to call it, it was a fantastic drive from Max. It's something you expect to see from him basically every time we come to Brazil. And I think at this point it is just nomenclature that he is one of those drivers that shows up to Interlagos and absolutely locks in from the jump. And you can see these kinds of incredible results, and you're not too surprised by them either. So what a fantastic result for Max. Obviously, I think his bid for a championship is pretty far outside the realm of possibility now. I believe even if he won a race and Lando DNF'd, I think he would still be more than a full race win behind at this point. So it would take just the miracle of all miracles for his championship bid. But this is one of those performances that they'll write in his you'll see in Max Verstappen highlights for years to come. And all right, we're here back once again talking about my guy, Oliver Bearman. Absolutely fantastic stuff from Ollie this weekend, finishing the Grand Prix in P6. He did have a bit of a tussle in the sprint race, a penalty of which he received, but felt a little harsh to me from what I saw. But ultimately, he turned it around for a Grand Prix finish in P6. To follow up a P4 in Mexico with a P6 in Brazil, especially if you put Brazil in the context of 2024 Brazil, where that monsoon where he really, really struggled to come back, have a performance like this. We've seen him score, what was it? I think 40 points since the summer break ended, or maybe not that many, but it is an insane amount of points. I think he might be on 40 points for the season, but regardless, he's been on an absolute tear. He's been in the points in, I believe, the previous 4 races in a row, including a P4 in Mexico, and a P6 here in Brazil. He also tagged his best qualifying for Haas, and was a P8. They're making it into Q3 once again. It was a fantastic run for Ollie. It's one of those performances where you're going to look back on in a couple of years when he's ultimately in the Ferrari, that will really point to show the opportunity and the baseline, the foundation of what you're seeing in a couple of years, because I can only imagine he's only going to get better from here. I am begging Haas internally to give this kid a lifetime contract, but ultimately he is a part of the Ferrari Drivers Academy, and it's probably only a matter of time. But a man can dream, can't he? And then last but not least, I have to talk about how much I feel for Gabriel Bortoleto. Obviously not the weekend that he wanted, his first weekend back at home. Obviously it's been more than a few years since we've seen a Brazilian driver on the grid. And you could tell from the beginning that he really wanted to come in and absolutely have a weekend to remember. But unfortunately, it will be a weekend to remember just for all the wrong reasons. We saw an enormous crash, and I mean enormous crash in this sprint race. It might be one of the biggest F1 crashes we've ever seen, and potentially the biggest since Zhou Guanyu Silverstone or Max Verstappen Copse Corner. I mean, this was a crash to end all crashes. I think I saw this, what was it? The first, he had two big impact points, with the first one was like 37 Gs or 34 Gs or 36 Gs or something like that. And then the second one, the big one, was 57 Gs. That is a crash of monumental proportions. And we're so happy that he was able to survive that. Thank God for just the safety regulations and the safety improvements that F1 has seen, because that was an unbelievable crash that he came back from. And I'm sure crashing out on lap 1 of the Grand Prix, just, the next day is probably not exactly what he wanted. It was, my brain fully locked in on that crash for a moment there, but I really feel for Gabby. You never want to see a result like this in your home race, especially as a rookie. Obviously, emotions are running high. You have a lot of friends and family probably in attendance to come and watch you for the first time, and you just have a tough weekend. It's in tricky conditions, and it was unfortunate to say the least. But ultimately, at the end of the day, as long as he's healthy, I think after this weekend, if he just walks away healthy, I think that's the best that we possibly could have asked for. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our weekend winners and losers. We'll begin with our weekend winner, and I already talked about him enough, but for me, while Lando Norris did have a very good weekend, I am giving my weekend winner to Kimi Antonelli. I'll always, root for a rookie having their best weekend of their season, of their career. It was a very, very, very good weekend for Kimi Antonelli to kind of come in and really show, kind of in the same way that Ollie Behrman has been sort of, showing in the last few rounds, taking a car like the Haas and overperforming in it. I think this is the first time that we've really seen Kimi get to grips with the car, be consistently quicker than George, and ultimately come in and just really put it to him and secure that result for himself and not have to rely on any external factors. And so Kimi having a result like this is huge. I'm sure it'll give him a ton of confidence, especially as we round out his rookie season going into next season in the new regs, the new regulation era. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I think this is going to be another one of those weekends where you look back and say that first win is just around the corner. So congratulations on a very, very good weekend, Kimi Antonelli. Let's go ahead and move things right along to our weekend losers. And this one, I think, is pretty clearly Ferrari. I mean, you have Charles Leclerc, through no fault of his own, getting taken out by Kimi Antonelli. Well, the combination of Kimi Antonelli and Oscar Piastri. Ferrari definitely didn't look quite, challenging for wins, or probably closer to challenging for podiums type of pace this weekend. But at the end of the day, a double DNF is never a good look, especially when you have Charles Leclerc, who has had issues in the past at the Brazilian Grand Prix. This year is a bit of an exception. It's a bit out of his control, and definitely not similar to things in the past. Not that a lot of the issues in the past have also been his fault. But this was just a horrible luck and horrible timing, wrong place at the wrong time for him. And then Lewis Hamilton just making a mistake, being in the position to tangle with an Alpine, ends up destroying his front wing, and ultimately that was kind of exactly what that was, and he ended up just retiring from the race. So a double DNF for Ferrari never feels great. I'm sure both of those drivers are ready to be away from the Scuderia Red for a little bit of time to try and regroup and regain a little bit of the mental health that they're probably losing over the course of this season. So hopefully they'll finish strong. Hopefully they'll bounce back. But at the end of the day, double DNF hurts a lot. All right, let's roll through our predictions quickly because there's not really a whole lot more to say. Let's begin with my pick for biggest positive surprise. I win with George Russell, thinking that we would see, Mercedes, Brazil, George getting his first win here a couple of seasons ago. But alas, I picked the wrong Mercedes driver. I ultimately did not give myself the points here because George Russell, experienced as he is, was not on the pace of his rookie teammate this race, and this weekend. And so I could not give myself the point here. As we move on to my pick for biggest disappointment, and unfortunately I nailed this one to a T. This was a pick for Lewis Hamilton. I think a lot of the popular pick for biggest positive surprises would be Lewis. Obviously Brazil, him not having his podium yet, this, that, and the other. We've seen him also have very, similar results as Max Verstappen. No matter where you qualify, just always seems to be on the pace. Ultimately, this was about as bad as it could have gotten for him. Obviously, whatever kind of weekend, ultimately retiring out of the Grand Prix after tangling with the back markers ahead. It was a weekend to forget for Lewis, and so unfortunately for him, but fortunately for me, I'm taking the point on this one. As we move ahead now to our qualifying top three, this is our qualifying for the grid on Sunday. I had a Lando Norris pole position, a Max Verstappen P2, and a Charles Leclerc P3. And while Max might have had a shock Q1 exit, my P1 and P3 were spot on. And so that is 2 points for me, making up for a L in my Mercedes pick for biggest positive surprise. So already we are cooking to start off our predictions, as we'll move on now to our pick for sprint winner. I went with Max Verstappen in this one. I think he really thrives on those, one practice session immediately into qualifying and then immediately into a sprint. And while ultimately he had a decent sprint, it was not good enough because Lando Norris was on another one this weekend. So no points for me on that one. As we move on now to my race podium, I had a Lando Norris win, ding, 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 a Max Verstappen P2, which was very, very close from coming in. So half point for me there because he finished on the podium, but just in the wrong position. And then I had a George Russell P3 because once again, I picked the wrong Mercedes driver. And so no points for me on that one, bringing my total up another 1.5 points for that one. And last but certainly not least, my one crazy prediction, or what I lovingly dubbed my one insane prediction, was Alpine points in Brazil. I made this because I feel like I've been absolutely on one with my predictions lately, and I wanted to send a Hail Mary and just take a shot in the dark. But in no way, shape, or form was I expecting this at all. Alpine have looked absolutely horrid, but nevertheless, my guy Pierre Gasly comes home to not only deliver 1 point, 2 points on the weekend because he finished 8th in the sprint and finished 10th in the Grand Prix. So not only did it come in once, it actually came in twice. I might have to talk to the Discord about potentially getting double points. We'll see. Let me know what you think down below. But let's go ahead and take a look at our results for the weekend. We ended up bagging 5.5 points, which is not bad. I have been on a generational run of predictions lately, and I'm not planning on stopping anytime soon. But if we take a look at our prediction standings for the community, I still lead with 77 points now. British TTG behind with 72 points to their name. 740 now with 69.5 points. F1 Inferno hot on their heels, 66 points. And then Andrew and Spectral have unfortunately not been able to join us in quite a while, but they're still on the board, so we're going to include them here. Andrew 32.5 points and Spectral with 10.5. So the championship still far from over, but I do have a fairly comfortable lead at this point. But like I said, I do not have plans for stopping anytime soon. We have Vegas coming up. We have Qatar on the last sprint race of the season there. And then of course we round things out in Abu Dhabi. So there we have it, guys. Now leaves us only with one question remaining. What is next in Formula One? As I aforementioned, F1 now heads back to the United States for the final time in 2025 to head to Las Vegas to race around the streets of the glowing city. Last season, we had a Russell Hamilton Sainz podium. It was an interesting race to say the least. And Vegas, I think, is just fascinating to a degree where you never really know what's going to happen and who's going to perform well. So I, for one, can't wait to see the drama unfold, especially with a title fight like we have this year. It could mean major swings one way or another. So I'm excited for it. I hope you are as well. But guys, if you made it this far into the video, I truly appreciate it. Leave a like on the video because it really helps me out. It helps us grow the channel. And if you're new here, we would love to have you join our community. So subscribe down below if you haven't already. Guys, that was the Brazilian Grand Prix. One of, if not the greatest weekend on the calendar because it always delivers bangers. But guys, we get a nice couple of weeks off before we're back for Vegas. So enjoy it. Take a nice weekend to get some breathers, get some air. For me, it's going to be spent entirely trying to figure out how I'm going to officially watch F1 in the future. So if you have any ideas for me, let me know down in the comment section below. But guys, that is going to wrap it up for me here in this one. And I'll see you in the next one.